Thank you, Mayor. Before we begin the work session, I'll go over the vision statement that the council has adopted. That Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town. So we have 7 items on the consent agenda, the first 2 of which are minutes from your October meetings. You've got the minutes from the October 11th regular meeting and the October 18th workshop. And we had a little glitch with our iCompass system, and so some of the content was originally not on the October 11th minutes. Jamie passed these out at the 5 o'clock meeting this afternoon. So this does have all the information that has been uploaded over the iCompass over the weekend. Mm-hmm. But that's for the October 11th meeting. The October 18th minutes were fine. The third item on the consent agenda is a proclamation recognizing the 175th anniversary of the incorporation of Gaston County. The county will have some celebration activities in December of this year. So they have approved a proclamation, or asking for all the towns within the county to approve the proclamation. So we can celebrate that next month. Item 4 on the consent agenda is a follow-up from some of your board interview workshops with a policy on how you will solicit and interview applicants for your various citizen advisory boards. This one specifically is about the Belmont Tourism Development Authority. As you know, we typically have a member representing the Hampton Inn and a member representing the Hilton Home to Suites. It's generally the general manager. Sometimes it's the sales manager. But nonetheless, we wanted to make sure that we had a seat for each of those hotels on the Tourism Development Authority, so that we're in compliance with the special session law that created the Tourism Development Authority, and that you would not have to solicit applications from the general manager or his or her designee from each hotel, and you wouldn't have to interview them. They would just automatically get appointment, because we have had some turnover, particularly the Hampton here recently. That way we'd always have a representative from each of those 2 hotels on that one. And on that, it's the Belmont Tourism Development Authority. I think we left the word development off of the policy, so we'll make that change. The 5th item on the consent agenda is a request to close multiple streets in the downtown area on Thanksgiving Day morning, November 25th, for the annual Turkey Day 5K. This is something we've done for many years now, and as that event has gotten more popular and more participants there, we've for the last several years, you've approved closing streets so that we can have a safe event. And that's early enough on Thanksgiving morning that we haven't had the complaints about traffic being blocked that we typically get with any 5K or any event or anything that disrupts anybody at all. This one's not, historically has not been too bad. Fewer complaints than normal. Item 6 is a follow-up from your October the 18th workshop. And at the workshop on the 18th, you approved the new replacement playground equipment at Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park across the street. And you said that you would use a portion of our allotment of the American Rescue Plan funding for that. I've got a resolution on the consent agenda for your consideration that formalizes that we would use ARP funding for that project. Yeah. And similarly, item 7 on the consent agenda is a resolution authorizing the use of the American Rescue Plan funding for our North Belmont water booster pump station. We also discussed that at the workshop on the 18th. And you said you did want to use that ARP funding for that project. And that is underway. So approving that resolution allows us to use the ARP funding as we move from the design and permitting phase of that to the construction phase of that. Okay. So those are the only items I have on the consent agenda. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I had one change I want to make to the policy about the appointment to the Citizen Advisory Board. The second red sentence in the first paragraph, I'd like to change to: these 2 board positions on the Belmont Tourism Development Authority shall be filled by the general manager of each hotel or an employee designated by each general manager, to make it clear that each hotel gets a seat, because as it reads now, it says the general manager of the hotels. That makes it seem like there's one general manager for both hotels.
That makes sense. take care of that for you, Jim.
Thank you.
If you approve that change, would you hand your copy to the clerk?
I would.
Thank you.
Okay. We good with that? Me too. Okay.
I had one question for the booster pump station.
Yes.
So I noticed on the playground resolution, we had a number listed for the ARP funding. Do we have a budget for that yet, or are we intentionally keeping that open-ended?
We have a budget for that. We don't know how much that's going to cost because we haven't bid it out yet. I believe the budget in the CIP for that is around $600,000. So far we've surveyed it. We have designed it, surveyed the property where it would go. We've got an appraisal for that, so hopefully we'll be making an offer on purchasing that soon. We've done design work, but we haven't bid it out yet. So
Okay.
with the way bidding is going these days, I didn't want to lock us into a number, then have to come back and ask for more. But certainly, as that project moves from permitting to bidding, you will have to approve that award. So you will have oversight of how much we'll spend on it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Very good. Okay, anybody else have anything? All right. Well, I want to call the meeting to order.
All right, thank you.
All right. Let's call the meeting to order. Jim's going to do the invocation. Richard's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And we'll set the agenda, okay?
Well, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bestowing your blessings on us, and we're thankful for the work that our colleagues have done, our colleague Ryan and Richard and Charlie, who are having an election tomorrow, and we pray for all the candidates and that the citizens exercise their right to vote and provide us with continued leadership and guidance. And we thank you for the efforts of those on council now and for continuing to guide our new council in the upcoming years. We thank you for all of your blessings that you've bestowed on the city, all of the wonderful things that we have going on here, and the enjoyment that we have of so many opportunities in Belmont. And we ask you to continue to bless this city and its citizens, and we ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
I'll move to set the agenda.
All right, we've got to move to set the agenda.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I would so move with the one modification to the appointment policy to citizen boards that I mentioned during the work session.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, let's move on. We have one person signed up for public comment, and that's Brett Bummeter. Hey, Brett, how you doing?
And we have a new system for timing.
Yeah.
Like you'll see that.
High tech,
Yeah.
high tech.
Only yellow doesn't
Not the
mean slow
hourglasses.
down. Yellow means speed up.
Yellow means you got 30 seconds.
Well, the way some people drive.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and fellow citizens. My name is Brett Bummeter. I've lived in Belmont since 2007. I'm here to share some details and point out some potential solutions that already exist to prevent some future problems, maybe a catastrophe. This is a little serious. I've had a lot of experience in my life working first for Army Intelligence, later received formal education, finance and accounting, and worked in audit. I also have a master's in laws in taxation and anti-money laundering. Basically, it means I know how to research and find stuff out. Now, I'm here to talk about River West. I live north Belmont specifically, and I want to point out that the city has the enforcement powers to protect our community from the recently, what I would call, inept work performed at River West Warehouse on Woodlawn. It's located between two Superfund sites. The closest is the Jacko Hughes site, which unfortunately has thousands of barrels of toxic solvents buried in the ground downstream from River West. That's upstream from the Rhine subdivision in Mount Holly. And the creek that runs below that site runs all the way to the Tuckasegee Park in Mount Holly. There are over 1,800 homes within 1 mile radius of this particular site. And no small issue, this is the worst of the worst in terms of toxins. Products that were shipped from Union Carbide, who many of you of my age or older probably recognize, 3M, DuPont, and more, were taken to the site, processing, extracting what they could, and then they unfortunately buried the rest. It's our challenge now as a community to deal with that until it's someday, the EPA finds a way to help us clean it up. River West shares some of the same Superfund substances on their own property too. 2 years ago, Council voted in Ordinance, and I believe it's 11.2.2019, requiring the developer to follow the NCDEQ Brownfield Agreement and the Watershed Ordinance of the City of Belmont. And thus, our city, all of us, we became a public-private partner with this project. Now, NCDEQ does not administer the regulations for exporting soil and vegetation. That's left to other regulatory agencies, including the city. Over 3 months, the developer's actions have resulted in what I would term a track-out spill of several hundred tons of potentially contaminated soil. They failed to test the soil upon export from their site as required by the Brownfield Agreement. And our city may even still have some requirements to report this spill to multiple agencies identified in our own ordinance. Much of the muddy soil dried and turned to dust, which then blew into the yards and homes of residents nearby, as well as cars, traffic, and construction crews. I'll remind you that these are toxins, you breathe it in, and you can definitely get cancer from some of these. Now, the City of Belmont signed on as a public-private partner of this development agreement. And we put in our consideration in the form of taxation, and we've also provided daily, what I would refer as site assistance or oversight on site. That might be referred to as
Brett.
management.
Yeah.
We've got some, sure.
Time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent you all an email, so you have a copy of the further details. That you need.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thank you. All right.
I know we don't engage, but we can direct, right? And so I forwarded this email to the city attorney, and I just want to follow up on some of the legal issues just to satisfy myself. So I'd be interested in the enforcement powers that the city may or may not have. Whether passing an ordinance would make us a public-private partner in the development. And so I can't help myself with these legal issues.
I haven't had a chance to read
Yeah.
the letter before tonight, but
It was sent just a little while
Yeah.
ago.
I mean, I'm
Since
interested.
I don't know the legal answers to those questions.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Brett. All right. Item number 2 on the regular agenda is consider the adoption of an ordinance ordering the demolition of the structure at 7212 Wilkinson Boulevard. Lindsay?
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well. So, tonight I have on the agenda, considered approval of an ordinance for the demolition of the non-residential structure at 7212 Wilkinson Boulevard, which is the automated card feeder building. This commercial warehouse was damaged during a structure fire in September of 2015. A code enforcement case was opened in July of 2019. Over the last 2 years, the city has worked with the property owners to allow them time to repair the structure, and that includes several extensions of deadlines. The first order to repair was actually issued in August of 2019. So the owner was issued an order to repair and demolish again with a due date of 10/27/21. And since then, he has failed to comply with the order, and the building remains in violation of Chapter 156. And currently the quotes are pending. Once those come in, I will advise and let you guys know.
The demolition quote.
The demolition. Do you have a question?
Has the owner made any indication if they plan to do anything, or I know you met with them?
He has, it's been more, he has done some, he's done the roof, he's put in windows, but as far as the integrity of the actual building, it doesn't meet our standards at all.
When was the last time you met with them?
Today, I went over there today.
And what was the gist of the,
It's the same.
and what did,
There's really no timelines. It's mainly asking for more time.
He has had 2 years.
It has
Well,
been,
it burned down 6 years ago.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but no, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 2 years, 2.5.
You know, we had planned to demolish it before they basically taken the deck and give them more time than we did, so it's really bad.
I feel like we've bent over backwards. I feel bad for the adjacent property owners at this point.
And the
So,
biggest problem, they didn't have any insurance on the building when it caught fire.
right,
If they'd have had insurance on it, it wouldn't have had any problems at all, because it would have been rebuilt,
you're
you
right.
know?
unfortunate, but
Yeah, and it's interesting, that's actually, if you consider, that could be considered a historic structure in a way, because that, building was originally vacant. Way before our time, but, it actually was Sam's granddad said, his son-in-law in business, that it was vacant there.
Didn't Max work,
Probably in the forties, maybe, or something.
didn't Max work there?
I don't know.
How many extensions have they received?
So I was actually, before I came up here, I was highlighting everything. So in August of 2019, they were given 90 days. In December of 2019, they were given a 60-day extension. In February of 2020, they were given an additional 30 days. August of 2020, 30 days. And I came in September. Issued a final notice of violation in October of 2020. I signed an agreement with him with a 90-day deadline in April of 2021. And then there wasn't any progress. And then in July, I sent an additional 90-day repair demolish order.
So you're getting close to a year or more in extensions.
A little over a year.
That's fair.
if you remember, this was Mark and my first meeting, and this was at the same time as that.
Yeah.
North Belmont.
North Belmont, and that guy seemed the bigger culprit at the time, and they seemed like they were making more progress with the car dealers, so we gave them some extensions, and then I think we said, we can't just deal with this like every month in the council meeting, and our focus was more on the
Yeah.
North Belmont property, which ultimately got resolved, and then it just seemed like he was making some initial progress, but all that sort of petered out, and, you know, I mean, at some point you just gotta do it. I mean, you know, it's code enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like if it hasn't been done by now,
Yeah,
when is it going to get done?
because I mean, it's been 2 years
Yeah.
with just this, and as Ryan pointed out, the original fire was in 2015.
Yeah. Long time ago.
He's made, he's made progress on the front part, but the back part, I don't know if you could see in this photo, the middle one, sort of. That whole portion is the roof still caved in
Yeah.
from that part on.
I mean, you know, I think we've been
We've been
Quite.
fair.
lenient.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it could have been resolved within the time frame that we provided.
yeah.
Anybody want to make a
reasonably.
motion that we,
So
Can I ask a question about the process to Lindsay? So if the council approves the ordinance for demolition, how long does the owner have to get it done before we would hire a demolition contractor to demolish the building?
So technically, this order
Or does this order
This is
authorize the city to
the
do
order.
it? Okay.
The one that I issued in July was given 90 days to either repair or demolish on his own. And
But-
if he did it, then it
And,
would,
okay, so you're still waiting on quotes.
I'm still waiting on
Okay,
quotes.
so if the city has to demolish hire a contractor to demolish the building, then we would put a lien on the property
Right.
in that amount so that we would be made whole at some point. So since we don't have the quotes for you, if you adopt the ordinance, I would ask that you authorize staff to execute the contract to the low bidder for that. So we don't have to bring that back to you next month.
Well, I would move to approve the demolition ordinance with the authorization of staff to approve the contract. Is it qualified low bidder or just low bidder?
This would
Qualified.
qualify.
To the qualified low bidder for the demolition, with it then to be a lien on the property.
Second.
All right.
Mark seconded.
Mark seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 3. Consider the adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 150 of the Code of Ordinances.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll present this request. This is a request to update Chapter 150 of the City Code of Ordinances, which is our building regulations chapter. And this is a follow-up to the discussion that you had on the October 18th workshop regarding the River West Business Park or the Woodlawn Industrial Park. Goes by both names, apparently. And specifically with concerns about some construction activities that were occurring late at night or early in the morning, depending on your perspective. At that meeting, you heard a presentation about why the construction activities were occurring in the early morning because of large concrete pours that could not occur during the day. You asked that, and as we discussed at the workshop, our ordinance is very clear that construction activities cannot start prior to 7 a.m. and they cannot extend past 8 p.m. or sunset, whichever is later. So in the winter months, including sunset would be, whichever is earlier, sunset would be earlier than 8 p.m. So you asked that we consider amending this section of the Code of Ordinance to allow for a special noise permit for these types of activities so that the city staff would know what's going on, if there's a request for after-hours construction activity. And so we can make some reasonable conditions on such a request. In this case, particularly, there were lighting tower concerns about the placement of lighting towers shining into people's houses. That's something that we could have addressed, with a little bit more authority with a special permit. And so I've looked at this and in talking with staff, we're requesting that you amend Chapter 150 to allow for and these are unusual, these are rare that we get these in the scheme of all the construction activities, these overnight large scale.
Sure.
Can you go over the examples of them just for?
So, for example, and I would defer to Bill or Jerry or somebody on the construction activities, but as I understand it, for these large-scale concrete pours, and for the example with the River West Park, these were basically pouring 1 acre of concrete overnight.
Yeah. And
in order for the concrete to pour properly and cure properly without getting too hot, that has to be done at night, so it can't be done during while the sun's out. There was also some other benefits of doing it at night, which is getting the concrete trucks off the streets, at peak rush hours. But it's basically in order to have the concrete cure properly. This has occurred with the construction of the Harris Teeter, with the Belmont Middle School. It's currently occurring with the new Claremont Hospital and the River West Business Park. There may be some other really Walmart and Lowe's when it was built, those very large foundation pads. So most of our construction, small businesses, houses clearly can be done during the day, during our normal hours of operation. So it is these unusually large buildings and we just don't have that many of them. So there just really wasn't a legal path forward under the current ordinance. And just issuing a notice of violation doesn't seem to be sufficient. So So we've created a proposal where if a general contractor does need to do construction activities in the early morning or before 7 a.m. or past sunset or 8 p.m., that they get a special approval from city staff. They would make that request to the city inspectors, and they would have to justify why they need to do it, not just
Right.
because it's more convenient for us or we know we've got a deadline and we're trying to make our deadline so we get a performance bonus, that it's got to be a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
If the city inspector is satisfied that it is a legitimate reason, then the city inspector would recommend that the city manager sign this special noise permit. That way we can look at an overall plan to see are there things that the contractor could do to mitigate the adverse impacts to adjacent property owners or adjacent residents, such as lighting, such as traffic control, so to the extent possible noise. And this would also allow us to notify the residents of planned construction activities. So under the proposed ordinance amendment, if the city inspector feels that it's a reasonable request, and we have conditions on there that we feel like are, again, construction's messy, it's noisy, fortunately it's temporary, but if it's going to happen, after hours, that we mitigate adverse impacts as best we can, then the inspector would make a recommendation to the manager. If the manager is satisfied, the manager would sign the permit, and then the city would notify all the residents within 1,000 feet of the construction site that this is, X activity is going to happen, on this date, so that you, as best you can prepare for it, and you at least won't be surprised, and you'll know that it is a one-off or two-off kind of activity, and it's not something you should just expect regularly.
Makes sense.
So, so there is a sort of a check with using the city inspector, who the city on sites like this, the city inspector will be at this site or a similar site routinely, and we'll know what's going on, and we'll be able to kind of sniff out whether or not it's a real request or if it's just a convenience type activity.
I have a question, and this one comment. In other words, I know we're looking at continuous pour concrete, which is what this was. Then that is a concern because you can't stop this with the itself. But other than that, once you go vertical, there should not be, I guess, anything that would necessitate having something other than that. Are you aware of anything else?
It's really the continuous pour part that is the
I
requirement.
want to make sure you, no, that's the next very limited. I don't want just because, even if you have a deadline, because so I want it to be very restricted. I'm not sure how we make sure.
Right, doing vertical construction, putting a roof on, things like that can be done during the day.
During the
So
daytime.
I think the city manager would sniff it out because it's within his discretion to make sure that it's reasonable.
Right.
So it would be like a specific activity, right? Not the project. It'd be an
Right,
activity.
Right.
And there'd be a time, like for
Right.
these 8 days,
Yes.
you can do this specific activity. Okay.
So-
Presumably between the city inspector who's making the report to the city manager and the city manager, they ferret out, they sniff out, like, oh, well, we're just running behind. It'd be more convenient to us to work extra hours to meet the deadline versus, this is,
Have a pay loop.
Right.
this is really the only way we can do it.
The only way.
And so, when you approve a project, through a rezoning or a major development process, there's sort of an implied permission that we would allow them to construct the project, right? So you wouldn't approve a project that, if you follow the letter of our ordinance, you couldn't do. That really wouldn't make sense. So this is an avenue to allow that to happen. But when there are specific times for specific reasons that they have to do work outside of our normal hours, we could do that. So it wouldn't be a blank check for the entire project, to do roofing or whatever at night. It would be specific things like concrete pour. This doesn't happen often, but NCDOT paving at night within the city paving at night to avoid traffic issues, those types of things. We don't typically have parking lot paving or driveway paving for large construction projects at night. That can be done during the day. So it would really concrete pours, but I don't want to limit it to concrete pours, but that's the gist of it. Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't say so.
Would it make sense to specify like a minimum notice period for the surrounding residences? Like, I'm just thinking, like, if somebody comes up to me and is like, hey, we're going to start pouring concrete tonight, I might react a little bit different to that than if, a week before they're like, oh, next week we're going to be doing this.
And yes, absolutely. And I would be open to any time period. I didn't put that in there specifically because the city inspector is going to be in daily contact with what's going on. And so and for these large projects, we would let the applicant or the property owner or developer know during the pre-construction meeting. If you need to use, after hours construction, there is a process. You have to fill out a permit, and we'd ask for a week's notice or 2 weeks' notice. So we'd have time to review it and time to get the word out. If they came to Gary or Kyle and said, tomorrow night we want to pour overnight, we wouldn't allow that because that's not enough time for us to respond and certainly to notify adjacent property owners or adjacent residents.
Would this come up in a zoning meeting, or would this come up in the construction meeting?
The construction meetings.
The biggest problem, the community wasn't informed when all this stuff was going on. And that was just
We're going to have more.
made a difference.
The hospital, or
Sure.
Belmont Abbey, or Holy Angels,
All
or
the
anybody
residences
wants.
within 1,000 feet of the hospital.
The dorms, maybe. We've got,
They're all, those college kids are all up at that.
Yeah, they don't sleep anyway.
right. But we have not gotten any complaints from the construction activities at the hospital.
Did we have any at the middle school?
We did have some at the middle school. And we addressed it through code enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had to issue a citation to the contractor. I don't recall any for the Harris Teeter.
No complaints.
As part of the enforcement component, per Jim's request, I'd like to tag on, when you look into that, can you find out where that enforcement component is vested? Whether it's with the council, with its planning and zoning, or stormwater coordinator? Because I understand that all of them may touch on that.
Are you talking about the environmental?
I'm looking at environmental issues.
Well, I'm just tagging, thought just occurred to me. I mean, when you look at it from Jim, I think the environmental will tie into the stormwater coordinator as well. So, I mean, when you look into all that, I was just asking if you'd see where that power is vested.
Not much to do with it. Concrete.
Okay, this is a noise.
I understand that. I'm talking about what Jim said previously. I'm sorry, it was just a stray thought, but I wanted to just get it to you before I forgot that.
I'm just still not clear on what you're asking.
When Brett was talking earlier, he was talking about there may be some certain powers vested in the community for oversight over the Superfund sites and things like that. And I'm sorry, it is a little bit out of context, but I want to just get it out there. Well, I don't know where that power would be vested. So if you were going to look into it, as Jim requested, if you could find where that power is vested, who it's vested in, would be good to know. But sorry, that is out of context. I didn't mean to take us off the rails.
Well, on a related note, what are the remedies if somebody doesn't follow this process?
So if they did this without asking for the permit application, it would be a code enforcement issue. If we turned down their request and they did it anyway, it would be a code enforcement issue.
Sure.
Is that the $500 fine?
It's 150 is the normal fine.
Okay. Or-
And
yeah,
the
I
code of
couldn't
ordinance
remember
says we
the
can't
number
exceed a
was.
$500 fine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We could certainly add in there if they went through the process and we turned them down and they did it anyway,
Mhm.
I would want to go to the maximum fine of $500
Right.
and skip the $150 one.
Well, where I'm going with this is, so it specifies specifically non-residential construction projects. I'm wondering if we can create a fine that might hurt a little bit more specifically for this, if that doesn't get us in trouble. Like, I don't know, $10,000 or something. For a big project like that, $150 is nothing. I don't even know if $10,000
I think the 500
would
comes from
but
state law. I think that's-
Okay.
It's state law. It is state law.
Yeah.
so are we limited to the 500?
I'm not absolutely positive about that, but I think that's probably correct.
Seems as though
I
if we
think it
denied the permit and then they went and did it anyway, that would be a willful violation. And sometimes you can sting people a little bit more for willful
Yeah.
violations, but I'm not sure if that would be something that you could do under the.
We could arrest them for making noise at night.
And I guess the other thing, legally, do we have an option to do a stop work order or something like that on that?
No.
So it sounds like we're on the same board as far as passing this, which we shook out the last meeting. It seems like a very reasonable solution, but I think we could pass this and then revisit the penalty
Yeah, as long
going
as
Yeah,
they-
forward.
if
Because
we-
I agree.
yeah.
I mean,
as long as they can meet our
I
compliance.
just write the check for 5 days at $500
Yeah.
and move
As long as they
on.
meet our compliance guidlines, I don't think we're gonna have a problem.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
don't-
if there's a way we can beef that up so it hurts a little bit more for specifically this.
I agree with
Well,
Mark
maybe
is that
the
we need
proper-
to,
proper would be more proportionate.
Well, okay, yeah, I will
I don't-
defer to the attorneys in the room as far as the
But I don't
exact
know if
wording,
there's-
but
I don't know if there's a way to, but I'm sure, Parks, this is a great meeting for you. You've got a lot of, you've got a lot of stuff, to look at. Aren't you? Yeah. Well, I know since as usually I'm the one that, hey, Jim, why don't you do this? Why don't you look at this? So it's kind of fun for me to like ask someone to look
Yeah.
at
But
research.
the term
Yeah.
is right.
Appreciate it.
Not what I'm.
Do you understand all your questions?
I'm trying.
That's where I would be struggling.
well,
But I think Ryan, well, unless anyone else has any other.
well, I think,
questions.
to Mark's point, I think breaking out commercial and residential is something to look into because, as Ryan said, if violation of this new ordinance is going to incur a penalty of either $150 or $500 a day, again, I write that check all day long to stay on schedule.
Can
So I
you do
mean,
it on-
this will help us, but I don't know that we're any better off than we were before unless we can put some real teeth into it, as Mark was saying, financially.
Mark, instead of splitting it between residential and commercial, would you be okay splitting it between like the size of the project in general?
yeah. I mean,
Because
that
if
would-
somebody's building a 1-story Marco's Pizza, for
So to
example,
speak.
it's commercial and it's a 2,000 square foot building,
Right, right.
that's certainly different than River
Yeah.
West. Also,
It
if
is.
somebody's building a bunch of residential homes, that might be a different.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do it because you're saying 1 month. What was it? Like, what was the concrete pour?
It was like an acre at a time.
Yeah. Like maybe that's the thing.
the
or-
size of the project
scope.
size
The
Yeah.
size of the project, I
Yeah.
think, makes more sense versus
makes it more
looking at-
proportionate,
makes it more proportionate. Yeah, and we're not singling out
right?
Mo-
Yeah.
mo-
one type of
most
resident. Yeah.
Most residential construction's
that's a
done
good
during the daytime anyway, with daylight hours and stuff like that. But this being what they had with the concrete they had to pour, that's what made the difference in that thing. But they need to let the neighbors know and be in compliance with what we.
And it would help the exercise of common sense. If it had been demonstrated, we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Got a second motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of a service agreement for water and sanitary sewer for the portion of South Shore Phase 2B in South Carolina.
Thank you, Mayor. I will present this and ask Jerry to answer any questions that you may
Okay.
have on it. As some of you may recall, when the city annexed what was then the Seven Oaks Farm in 2013, there was a portion of the Seven Oaks property located in York County, South Carolina, that clearly is outside of our jurisdiction. So the city only annexed the portion of what is now McLean that was in North Carolina in Gaston County. You applied initial conditional zoning on just the part that was in our jurisdiction. Since then, as the south shore of McLean has gone through the actual construction and development process, they are working on South Shore Phase 2 and Phase 2B now. A portion of Phase 2B is located in York County, South Carolina. For the past year or so, we have asked the developers, engineers to coordinate with York County and the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control on how those about 37 lots on about 35 acres, how they should get water and sewer. Because we can provide it. We are providing water and sewer service to the Belmont, to the North Carolina portion of that neighborhood. We can easily do it to the South Carolina portion. This is a sort of a new regulatory thing for us, providing water and sewer service across state lines. So we have been working with the developer and with York County over the past year to really formalize how this happens. And the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control has requested that the city enter into a service agreement for water and sanitary sewer that is found on page 46 of your agenda packet. After all this discussion, it looks like we have a relatively easy one-page agreement that we just have to sign saying that the city will serve this area with water and sewer. So I've got the map of the area that will be in, or that is in South Carolina. Jerry can answer any of the technical issues if you have any, but we do have the capacity to serve these 37 homes that will be in South Carolina with city water and sewer. And since it's outside our jurisdiction, we will charge them the double rates that we charge for water and sewer customers who are outside the city limits.
So we'll be getting revenue from that too, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a technical question, I guess it would be more of a legal question. I mean, the agreement just seems sort of sparse. Like I would have expected a little bit more, like in terms of like, you know, liability and warranties and, you know, I mean, is this fine? I mean, this is like, hey, we're gonna provide sewer services to some houses in South Carolina, okay.
Our parks you on a hook again?
Is that,
We, Michael asked where this come from.
And this came from York County, right? Or DHEC? Yes. So this came from our South Carolina partners.
And it should be noted.
yeah.
Anything that would go wrong.
So what is he saying?
So what Jerry is saying is that the agreement says on page or item 2 of the recitals, all requirements for public water are to be held to the standards of the city of Belmont and NCDEQ. So we will essentially treat this as if it were in North Carolina and follow the normal regulations and processes.
So there shouldn't be any surprises, like
Yeah.
something that would be perfectly fine here runs afoul of
Right.
South Carolina, like, we didn't know.
Yeah, because
Use Belmont legal to do it.
Okay.
so we will treat this as if it were in North Carolina, and South Carolina has said, Belmont, treat this as if we're in North Carolina following North Carolina regulations.
They pay like what, the double.
They would pay the double rates for water and sewer.
Are there any differences in like, because I know like sometimes there's like utility taxes and stuff, like does providing water service and selling water service in another state, like I know it's only 37 houses, but like, is that a complication that we're worried about or anything like that? I don't know if you see where I'm going with this, but
Sounds like it'll be treated like it's in North Carolina, whatever our system is.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question.
well, I don't know if South Carolina does. That's what I was
Then,
Kinda
yeah,
going.
and so we will collect water and sewer revenue from usage. We will not collect any taxes because it's in South Carolina. So this area, I would assume, will be subject to all South Carolina taxation and
Who's responsible for the roads? Because at some point, we're gonna have to make street cuts for repair of water lines.
we would repair a utility cut as if we were in any area. We would not be responsible for maintaining those. It looks like there's 2 cul-de-sacs. We would not be responsible for those,
For those
for
roads.
normal maintenance.
Okay. Well, is a utility cut considered normal maintenance or wear and tear? Because there might be some conflict with Fort Mill saying, well, you tore up our road to repair your water line, you repair the road. Is that a possibility?
Anything is possible. But if we had to go in and make a cut because there was a water leak, we would repair it as if it were on the north side of the line.
Okay.
I mean,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
There isn't much here,
Yeah.
but maybe that's a good,
Yeah,
possibly a
I
good
mean,
thing.
you know, I agree with that. I mean, like, I would have expected a little bit
Yeah.
more considering how tricky this is with like interstate issues, but if this came from South Carolina and this is what, you know,
Request, yeah.
they wanna do, I'm like, sometimes more is less.
Who do they pay their
Less
taxes
is
to?
more.
I mean, we have the tax situation breakdown. They pay Belmont city taxes, I guess.
No, sir, because they're outside the city
They're
limits.
outside the
So
city.
they would pay York County taxes. And if there are any children, they would go to York County schools.
From what I understand, the rule is your house is half in North Carolina, half in South Carolina. You pay taxes to the state that you spend more time in your
I've heard it all.
I've never thought of that.
Probably depends on the couple.
Yeah, we're
What,
But we digress.
other than the water revenue, I mean, we're getting double the water revenue. If they pay their taxes to Fort Mill, that's a singular benefit to us, is the water revenue.
So they would pay York, so I think this is still just unincorporated York County. So they would pay York County property taxes, but they would pay their water and sewer bills to the city. They would not pay stormwater fees. They would not pay solid waste fees. So they would pay water and sewer double rates to the city. That would be the only financial
Revenue.
benefit,
Okay.
direct financial revenue we would receive.
It's like a law school exam question.
Well,
Yeah.
It's just like the people that live on like Bowen Drive or something that get city water. They don't. That's a bad example because they're owned well. But just like the neighborhoods where
like our
we provide
ATJ.
water,
Like Misty Waters,
Yeah.
where we have city water and Misty
I
Waters.
think this. I mean, obviously the state overcomplicates it, but
This time.
apparently not. So I think we're overcomplicating.
Yeah. Well,
Well, I mean, I think it's good just to bat it around because there is some
Yeah.
potentially unknown circumstances that might arise.
yeah, it's a process that wasn't more detailed, but I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Got a second motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Very good. All right, next item on the
Thank you.
agenda is the agreement with Duke Energy to host electric vehicle charging stations.
And I asked Kevin
That's gonna
Kraus
be
to
great.
come and speak on this. He's been working on
All
this.
things
application.
electric.
All right, Kevin?
Charging stations. All right. So electric vehicles are becoming more prevalent. And actually, it was a resident of Belmont that made us aware of this program, I believe, that works for Duke Energy. So we looked into it, and they were offering these charging stations free of charge, basically for local governments and places like that. I believe they charge for these in some locations. They do draw people into town. People will come and charge their vehicle. They'll stay around, eat lunch, that type of thing. So it's good for travelers as well. I've included the agreement here with Duke Energy, and I kind of go over just a couple highlights of that. Duke installs this at their own expense. Maintenance is handled with Duke Energy. The terms you'll see in there that it expires December 31st, 2026, but it continues on a year-to-year basis if all the parties agree. There's one caveat here about the ADA accessibility requirements. And on the next page, I think there's a map. This was the location that we had selected and submitted with the application because of the grass area where they could put those charging stations. It does need to meet ADA requirements. So this does say in there that when we come down for the site visit and the installation, that it could possibly move in this area depending upon the ADA. But we should be able to accommodate those sites, but you may lose an extra space because you have to have that extra area with the hatch marks. So that's the one thing about the ADA. So it could move in that parking lot. And anytime we want to get out of this agreement, it's pretty much a 30-day notice. If we ever sold the property, we just need to give a 30-day notice. So we brought this to you tonight just to see if you're interested in entering into this agreement with Duke. If so, we would execute this agreement and we get started.
So basically what you're saying, you turn in by City Hall and then you come down that first block and the
Yeah. You would make
charging
that-
stations are right there. Okay.
Mhm.
I I don't believe it's year to year. I think there's an original term and there's one-year extension, if you look at 3A. And I think if that one-year extension is exercised, then the agreement terminates at the end of that year. And I didn't see anything for further renewal. So my question would be, if the agreement terminates, what's going to happen to the charging stations? And if the title is transferred to us, would we then be responsible for service and maintenance after that?
It does have this in parts, you may, I don't know if you can see that, it says, to remove the equipment at Duke Energy's expense. So I guess you have that option as well, as just if
It's at their
it's
expense
over,
too.
it says they would remove them at their expense.
But I think there's another provision that says they
Transfer the
could
title.
transfer title to us. So I just want to make sure that, I mean, I suppose we'd have the option to consider that, but that it's, right now it looks free of charge, but I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any like back-end service and maintenance costs. Because it looks like the agreement is not, there's going to be a finite end to it. And so what's going to happen with that equipment, and would we be responsible for anything if it stays there, in terms of like service and maintenance?
I would say
And the
that
cost of
in that
electricity.
scenario-
Yes, and section 5 on page 56 addresses that, the very bottom. It says host, if it transfers from Duke to the city, the host would be we would be the host, would be responsible for electrical consumption costs, network access fees, maintenance costs, and any repair costs thereafter. Now, if we didn't want it, we would ask Duke to remove them.
What's that like? If they remove them, would it, is it ripping a hole in the ground or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there would be, so you'd have to repair earthwork
That,
there.
the contract says they'd be responsible for that. Like if they damage the
Yeah.
property removing it, they're responsible for that.
Well, they're gonna have to run electrical power to it somehow.
Mhm.
Now, you're potentially losing 3 parking spaces, right? Because the charging stations, of course, will be no parking. You may absorb a third for handicap use, so we could lose up to 3. I didn't see it in here, and I may have missed it. How do they sell this? I mean, you plug into your car, is it metered? I mean, is this a free service, or are we charging? Are they
I
charging?
believe people pay for it, and it's metered, is how it would be.
How do you pay for it? Like a credit card, just like a gas station?
Put
Okay.
it up at Travel and Tourism. Why don't you put it up at the Travel and Tourism building?
The location, I mean, we could discuss with them, I'm sure that, we could bring other options to them.
And if ExxonMobil wanted to put a gas station down there, I'd get, no. Oh,
Well, how long does it take to charge?
Well, there's 2 different stations, there's, here, the
Give them
level
free
3,
rent to sell
one
more.
that's the fast charging ones. They can get up to 250 miles on their vehicle in an hour, and it's in like 15 minutes. So you can do quick charges. So if you were just plugged in for 15 minutes, they would get maybe 75.
Okay.
The level 2, there's a different one that's a lot less miles, 25 to 60 miles in an hour to charge.
So I
And
guess
that was the larger ones, was the level 3.
So I guess the thought is you'd hook it up and then go get a
have lunch.
sandwich or something.
At one of our many fine restaurants.
Yes.
And we don't have any other ones around in Belmont. So we have the one at Old Stone,
There's one at
but
Old
it's
Stone.
only for Teslas, apparently.
Yeah.
You can't charge a,
It is for
a
Teslas,
Nissan Leaf or
Yeah.
another vehicle. It must be a Tesla.
How will people know that they're there if they don't know that
Apps
they're
on their
already?
phone. That's how they
Okay.
found these things now.
Okay.
Is this strictly car use, or could you put a golf cart chart?
I think it's going to be specific to.
Specific
There's
to
only like
cars.
2. There's 2 charging types, and they're more universal for everything but a Tesla. Like Tesla has their own thing,
Mhm.
and then everybody else is one of 2 types. But I don't think a golf cart would exist.
Yeah.
How did we come up with this location? Did they choose it, or did we choose it?
We just selected being based on downtown area. Thought that would be the best location. But when they come down to install, I'm sure there's some leeway in the area that it's located. If there's other areas that you think would be better, we can always go back to them.
Well, I mean, Ryan's point is interesting because, I mean, people on the interstate traveling who need a charge, that would be very convenient at the Travel and Tourism for them.
The only thing I would say on that one is I think a lot of people like to have something to do while they're waiting on the charge. And
Yeah,
we'd
that's
like them
right.
to spend their
I'm
money.
guessing the
Good for
appeal is that
business.
you come downtown,
Yes.
hook it up, and then kind of while you're waiting for it to do its
And-
thing.
And I believe the Travel and Tourism Building is still closed to the public. So if you were to charge your vehicle at Travel and Tourism, you would just sit there. I mean, you could
Yeah.
try to walk downtown, but
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, you're also potentially taking 3 parking spots out of the rotation when we have limited parking for, how many electric cars are on the road versus how many gas cars are on the road.
More and more now.
I feel like we're bending over backwards for people with electric cars.
I mean, like I said, I'm neither pro nor con, but I mean, there's variables here.
I mean, nobody's putting gas pumps around to make it convenient, but it's, I don't know, I'm just trying to think if I want to look at that behind City Hall. I mean, we're letting Duke Energy come in rent-free to sell electricity to cars right there. To me, it's more of an eyesore than anything, but
So it does have a
it has a
30,
cool feature, I guess. 'cause
it does
we're
have a 30-day
trying to-
notice if we decide we don't like it. So like,
That's a lot of work for 30 days.
But once they know it's there, though, they're gonna be using that thing.
well,
There's no time limit on this agreement. It could always be taken to the Environmental Sustainability Board. I know Peyton mentioned that they would be she thought they would be very excited about this project, and they may want to weigh in on locations or pros and cons to bring back to you more than because I'm not as knowledgeable about. I drive a Gus
What about-
Gas guzzling.
I like Gus
Ford.
Gaslin better. Is it?
What about the police station over there? Because it would still be close enough to walk to downtown and get those extra parking spaces.
No one wants to hang out at the police.
But you could certainly you could walk around the corner.
I agree with you. I think
We get to down to the back.
pick up there, we can both motorcycles and whatever,
Sure.
that kind of thing, and hang out and travel tourism. And they're gonna be open eventually,
Yeah.
so that makes there's this need, and we are seeing more of this. Our nephew decided that with the 2 small children, they were going from DC to Florida and had to stop and charge. It made absolutely no sense to me to make that kind of trip, but I think we are gonna see more of that happening.
I think the police station would be where I'd put it.
Huh.
Because it's close to downtown. There's extra parking. We just put that new pad there. People could park there and walk around the corner to downtown.
Kevin, is there any time constraints on this, or because I mean, is this something that we could table and think about, or do you need a decision tonight?
I did not see any time constraints. They sent the agreement with no timetable on it.
yeah, it
So
begins on the effective date, which would be
Didn't
the time.
they
the date you
mention
would approve it.
2026 on that thing?
that's the
That's what it
expiration.
is.
Talking about like when we have to enter into it.
All right.
So-
There's no, if you want more time, to
Jim?
think, that's not a problem.
It's up to you all, whatever.
Would you like to do environmental sustainability?
Got nothing to lose.
I mean, the way I'm reading the contract is if we
3
put it
parking
in and
places
decide we hate
in a
it,
tight
we give them 30 days
market.
notice and they have to pull it out.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm wrong on that. Oh, I thought that's,
It's that was on the.
oh, but we can't?
For sale of property, there's a 30-day notice.
It's 3B.
3B.
Yeah, Duke has a right to terminate.
Oh.
I didn't see it from Payne.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
That was if we sell the property on 14.
I thought that seemed awfully
Those
convenient.
shall notify Duke Energy at least 30 days prior to the sale of the property.
Do we make any money off of this?
No, and we cannot. So you can't have a guy standing there accepting cash. It says that basically.
Is somebody out there with like one of those
That was
flags?
not what I was.
But if the rest of
No,
us will get taxes from their
You know,
shopping in our restaurants and stuff.
no compensation of any kind, either by cash, in-kind services, or otherwise.
Yeah.
So their business model is to come in and put these things in our
I
parking
think
lot.
this is a Volkswagen deal. Remember that settlement, and they had to pay for all these charging stations. So I think this is paid for by your local Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that was money, and Duke Energy's
Yeah.
the one implementing
Alright.
I'm not a fan in this location.
Is it location or is it just this? I mean, we can just tell Duke.
I think it's
We're gonna
cool.
pass
I think
on
it's
it.
a cool idea, but I wouldn't use 3 parking spots behind
Yeah,
City Hall to do it.
we got limited
Well,
parking.
what happens if people park there that don't use you can put the signs up, but they're not in our ordinance to enforce it. I don't know.
And we don't have time limits on this particular parking lot.
Well, they should have common sense to look at
We would
that
hope
thing.
so.
I mean,
Most
you'd think
people
so.
wouldn't, but if it became packed, people may still park there.
I don't park at the one at
You can put
Oldstone.
up signs that says, no parking unless actively charging.
Well, does that
Yeah,
lot
one-
fill up during the day? I thought it was mostly during like when we're doing events downtown that it's the issue, which I have to imagine is probably not when people are going to be charging, because those are like at night.
I mean, it does get restaurant traffic, so lunch and dinner. I don't know throughout the day, but
So let me ask you this, to the council, conceptually, do we like the idea of having these chargers available?
Yeah, I think it's
I
a
do.
good idea.
I think so too.
I still like the
It's-
travel tourism spot because of where you're coming off the interstate, that just makes better sense to me. That's what I.
So it's location.
Mhm.
Okay, so do we want to decide location tonight, or we want to defer it and have them bring us back location, or is travel and tourism where you think it might?
my
might go?
understanding from Gaston County Travel and Tourism is they don't plan to reopen their building.
They don't.
What?
What are you gonna do with it?
Well,
They're using, it's their offices, but they're not having the public come in to get their information anymore.
That seems a little
There'll be a lot of
counterintuitive.
Yeah,
for
so-
tourism.
A tourism building that's closed to the public. That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
then they don't need the parking spaces, so we can use them then.
I like where you're going with this.
So we would need to ask them about that parking
Yeah.
space, so I think that's what we should do. is
I would
have
explore some other locations for this. That would be.
I mean, I think there's value in having it downtown because, I mean, theoretically they would shop or
What
do
about the-
something.
What about like the back end where we have the? Oh, that's the state's parking lot. NCDOT.
Can staff look at other locations if we
what
table
if
this and bring them
we do
to
it
us?
down at McLean and one's in North Carolina, one's in South Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not knowledgeable.
And we can build a water fountain and provide water service and make it even more complicated.
So would you need a motion to table?
To continue it
To continue.
or table it? What would we do?
Are you referring it to somebody?
Do you want to refer it back to the Environmental
What if
Sustainability Board and the Main Street Board so
I
we can
think
look
we're
at
up or
somewhere
down.
downtown?
Ask them to investigate other locations to give us some options.
And we'll verify with Gaston County Travel and Tourism on the future of
All
their
They
use.
should consider the police station.
And we'll take a look at the police station.
One of the
That's a good
applications.
spot for
And
it.
since
I'm telling you, that's the best spot.
Since we don't know about this, because none of us have an electric car, I will at least call Invocation Sam's nephew and find out what they normally do, because they.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know either, so I think. we
All right.
I mean, if we need to rent a Tesla to test drive this, I'm available. Just let me know.
Okay. All right. Very
Thanks,
good.
Kevin.
So,
Parks,
We're
what,
gonna Yeah, good defer.
Refer to the environmental sustainability.
Thanks, Kevin.
Up to explore alternate locations.
and Main Street. or just-
And Main
I'd like to get the Main Street Board's thoughts on where they think the most appropriate spot is.
Till we get the right location.
I'll make that motion, just for no other reason than to move on to something else.
All right.
I'll second.
You got a second motion, a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay. Next item is the committee reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Under committee reports, you've got the draft minutes of the October 20th Environmental Sustainability Board meeting. We did have other meetings, but they were later in the month and everything else going on. We'll get you those draft minutes next month. So you'll need to show up, Ryan, so that you can read those next month. So that's the only committee report. And then I don't have much on the manager's report. I don't know if Phil is here or not, but hopefully you've had a chance to go downtown the last 2 weekends. The Moonlight on Main event has been, I think, a big success. We seem to have a lot of people downtown for the specific events, but also just looking at the art and visiting downtown businesses. That event concludes this weekend, so November 4th through the 7th. So thanks to Phil and Cassidy and Morgan and all their volunteers for putting that on,
Great
and all the partners and sponsors for that event. The next workshop will be November the 15th here, and we'll be talking about various capital projects, specifically give you an update on the Abbey Creek Greenway project. And then if there are other items that you want to talk about, let me know, and we'll put that on the agenda for the 15th. I've given you our holiday office closure will be closed on November 11th for Veterans Day, and then for Thanksgiving on Thursday and Friday, the 25th and 26th. The Christmas tree lighting ceremony is Monday, November the 29th at 6:30 p.m. in front of City Hall. So it's early this year because of the way the calendar fell. And therefore, the annual Christmas parade will be Tuesday, November the 30th at 3:30 p.m. And it's normal route, so it will not be the reverse drive-through event that we had last year. It will be our traditional Christmas parade.
Yeah.
And during our 5 o'clock meeting, we talked about moving the groundbreaking ceremony for the Recreation Center from Friday, December 3rd to Saturday, December the 4th. I checked with our general contractor, Edifice. They have an event that morning, December 4th, from 8 to 12, so they could not be here. Do you mind checking your calendars to see if you're available the following Saturday, December the 11th at 9 a.m.? Wake Forest will not be in the ACC Championship on December the 11th because they will have already won it. We will be awaiting which bowl game or national championship bowl we will go to.
Yeah, that's good.
December
So
11th.
Saturday the 11th at 9, if
That's
just
fine.
pencil that in,
That's fine.
and we'll confirm with our with the rec board and with Edifice and CPL on that.
Okay.
That is all that I have for the manager's report.
Thank you. Any other business?
No, I would just,
Start here with Ryan.
I just want to say there's been a lot of great feedback on this Moonlight on Main. Actually, I haven't heard any negative feedback. I spoke with Steve Pepitone the other night, and he said it's just been phenomenal across the board. And so I thought it was good that we all supported that event, and I hope y'all continue to roll the dice a little bit within the Main Street board. I think you're going to miss some, but you're going to have to. Like, if you miss 1 out of 10, you're still getting 9 out of 10 right, and that's pretty powerful. And, I think if you look at the impact that board has on employment in the downtown area, the sales tax revenue, can only imagine the percentage of the ABC sales tax that are coming back. I think it's a big, powerful engine. I think it's your largest economic developer. I think it's your largest employer. So I hope somebody here can champion that, or if not champion it, you can all kind of come up with a way to continue doing it. And I think Steve's a good example. We've helped him along the way with a couple of small things here and there. And he built that massive building that matches the bike shop, which was a way more expensive option than doing a traditional building. As part of that, he's recruited Heirloom, the Honeybee Bakery, and what's the other place? This guy himself brought in 3 additional buildings to what he's done. And so I think if you just keep focusing on that and keep working, I think it's pretty powerful. So I hope you hang on to that. I think it's great that we got 3 employees there too. Yeah, and I'll be around for a couple more weeks. So.
Yeah. All right, Richard?
yeah, I'd just like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Ryan and his service to the city and on council. There have been times where we've agreed and there have been times we've had some spirited debates. But I think, both of those have made me a better council person because they've made me think and sometimes question my own thought process and go back and look at some things. But I think you provided good, honorable service to the city, so I appreciate that. On that note, I would like to say it's either been an honor to serve with you, or it will be a continued honor to serve with you all. But no, I do appreciate the discussions we've had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
Since we talked about board members and we talked about the Tourism Development Authority, maybe we should give some thought to the Environmental Sustainability Board student members. I think that has been vacant for quite a while, whether we need to reconstitute that or do something to sort of drum up some interest in that so that board can be at full capacity. I didn't know whether, I'd also like to echo what's been said about Moonlight on Main and that from everything. I was there one night. I had to miss due to my football travels on a number of other nights. But it seems like it's been a great event, and that's thanks to like many hours of planning and support and volunteer service from a number of people. So it's just been great for Belmont and a great thing. So appreciate all the work that's made it possible. I didn't know there was this meeting or next meeting that we were supposed to say nice things about Ryan. I'd hope for another month to try and come up with a couple things. But, no, I mean,
Adrian told me I have to be here at the next one.
okay, well,
Yeah.
but I
It's gonna take me a month to figure out something nice to say about
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
but no, I mean, seriously, it's been, I've enjoyed serving with you. It's been an honor and a privilege, and really, you know, you were the one that got me interested in all of this and city council work and everything. So it's probably, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So I just appreciate what you've done for the city, and I wish all candidates tomorrow good luck. But I did want to say, to Richard and to Charlie, I've really enjoyed the last 2 years. It's been an honor and privilege to serve with both of you. You both work really hard for the citizens of Belmont, and I hope that we'll be able to continue to work together in the upcoming years. So that's all.
Thank you, Jim. Ryan, I just want to tell you, I've enjoyed working with you too. You've been a great council member, got some good ideas, stuff like that, and I think you've really helped us a lot as far as our decisions we've made. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Richard, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you, too.
And Martha?
Well, since you're gonna be here next month, I'll save my advice for then.
Oh, okay.
The only thing
Something to look forward
I
to.
had brought up earlier, keep Belmont beautiful, possibly going with the Main Street Board. I think Adrian and Bill Carroll have discussed what they thought would work. And there have been some issues with the board that I think will be resolved. And the board chose to continue to work with Public Works, which I think is fine. It's just a matter of what they're more comfortable with and the personnel involved. At this point, that's the direction they want to go.
Okay. Thank you, Martha.
Well, just thank you to Ryan for your service. I've always appreciated your perspective on things, and you always make me think harder. So I appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Phil and his team and the Main Street Board and the small army of volunteers that have made the Moonlight on Main possible. I think that's very clearly the biggest thing going on in our area right now, and that's largely due to them. So it's a lot of hard work, I know, went into that. So thank you for that. That's all I've got.
All right. With that, does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.